RCR with Paul Brennan.
Joining us now at RCR is Saad Bahjat Chakra. Saad holds university degrees in physics and in education. In 2016, he pursued advanced studies in creative technologies at the Auckland University of Technology. And he's a Lebanese researcher, published writer, educator, reform activist, businessman, and community leader. He's deputy chair of Lebanity Enterprises Charitable Trust. And he's joining us at RCR right now to talk about the Israeli invasion of South Lebanon and the civilian casualties and our New Zealand's response. Saad, welcome to RCR. It's great to have you on our channel. I hope you're well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul.
Can we start by looking at the right now? There's a conflict in the Middle East, and it seems to, if you look at the way it's reported, involve Israel, the United States, and Iran. But a whole lot of other things have happened in the world too. Recently, it's been Venezuela. Cuba is kind of being targeted. I'm just wondering if you see any interconnectedness in everything that's happening, not just in the Middle East, but everything that's been happening.
Well, yes, Paul. Actually, what is happening isn't a conspiracy as much as it is a system that has developed, similar to how every other system develops and grows. Like the smaller systems, like a startup company is controlled by the people who start it up, and they can simply stop it and shut it down. But then when systems grow beyond a certain threshold, they become like empires, like huge syndicates. Now, when systems become like that, they develop intricacies within them, details that the people who are working or operating through the system are not aware of these intricacies. They or are not capable even to cause a change in order to save the system itself. So what we have seen in the past are many empires in history that eventually self-destructed. So this is a pattern. So people need to see that what we are seeing now in the world is not very different from systems that eventually grow, that impose on any human element in the system a way of operation and loyalty. So if you imagine yourself, for example, you're a person in a powerful person in one of the powerful governments, and then you want to stand in the way of the system, you're going to be discredited by the others, because then you're going to make the government fail. The government doesn't want to fail. If you're a banker and you want to do something about the policies of banks, like you're a whistleblower, for example, then again, the bank, your colleagues are going to be threatened. Their livelihood is going to be threatened. So the system itself forces them to make a choice. They either destroy the system or leave the system. Leaving the system at the macro scale is very dangerous because it causes wars. What is common between what we see now happening is that wars that are being waged against countries, whether dictatorships or non-dictatorships, that do not agree to have their collateral, their wealth, like the material wealth.
So that's oil and things like that.
Oil, metals, gas. The countries that do not allow the transfer of money or sales. Like if you want to sell oil, you got to follow the petrodollar to sell oil. If you are against, I am going to assume that our listeners know what the petrodollar is. You're not allowed to sell any oil except through a certain financial channel. That is called a petrodollar, and the money has to go through the American banks. The American banking system which is also connected, of course, to the banks in Munich where money settlement happens, and to the city in London. So this is a very powerful system that has developed.
So this is the empire that we're talking about, the current empire. And maybe I'm jumping the gun, but many feel that, and many comment that empire appears to be ultimately crumbling. And we're seeing it happen, like you mentioned before, through history. Empires come and they go, they reach a zenith, and then it's all downhill. Is that what's happening now, do you think?
I believe that, yes, this is what's happening, and it is very difficult for it to save itself, because to save itself means to change, and that means it's not itself anymore. It doesn't
and to give up power, right?
To give up power. It can't happen. It gives up power, then it's no more there. And it only exists because it has this power. And the power is mainly through very, very simple, specific channels that people live every day. Whenever you use your credit card, Paul, when you use your credit card, the money goes through these channels, which we call rails, like the rails of money exchange, whether it is an individual or whether it is a whole country. Now, the money has to go through these rails. And the good thing, the successful thing, I shouldn't say good or bad, the successful thing that they have done is actually when you follow these systems, then you're described as transparent. So there is transparency in your money movements. But if you try to move your money without the control of that system through channels outside that system, then you are not being transparent. And this happened to the Vatican. Like the Vatican eventually had to give up. I think it was February last year when the Vatican eventually had to comply, and because it was really fought, and the fighting was very strong, a lot of discreditation, a lot of accusations of being, and I'm not sure, like I can't defend the Vatican, but what we heard is a lot of accusations of connections with mafia money, and that the Vatican did not want to comply because it's benefiting from the mafia money. Now, looking into the wealth of the Vatican, I'm not sure how much it really cares about the mafia money.
Interesting point you made just before. I think you were making a point with that. The use of words, transparency, actually doesn't really mean transparency, does it?
That's right. Actually, what the system uses is a number of control channels. One of them is academia. Right. In academia, they change the meaning of concepts. So, for example, if you look up the word civilization, in the modern social sciences, civilization is linked to the individualistic culture, to no tribes, and to the Western way. And the word capitalism is mentioned. Like civilization is linked to capitalism. And anything that is on the other side, where you have a lot of social benefits, is not classified as civilized. When you look at modernity, it is the same. The meaning of modernity changes. Now, so that the listener links it to something that they live every day. If you have on a certain street a restaurant that calls itself the best, just the best, then people start using the word the best to refer to that restaurant, although that restaurant is not necessarily the best.
No, it might be the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be the worst, yes. So there is this. There is a lot of control on academia because, you know, if you have the money and you are the funder, then you can choose what to fund. You fund research that helps you. A lot of research that helps you is making sure, for example, that your system is good, making sure that the certain vocabulary is being used, etc. So the research in sciences, whether it is in the social sciences or even in the hard sciences, has been influenced a lot by the interests of such big powers. Now, when I say this big power, of course, the corporations simply need that big power. The banks are stronger than the corporations because the corporations need the money. Otherwise, if they're not financed, then they cannot do business.
And the banks need the collateral. And that's getting back to that word collateral again. And those are those resources. Saad, can you give us a bit of a history lesson? Because
Yes.
I think we need to know the context of how we've got to where we are today.
Yes. Yeah,
So if you don't
yeah.
mind, I mean, many of us have heard of the Balfour Declaration of the early 1900s. What was the Balfour Declaration? Can you tell us? What was it there? What was the purpose of it? And then that zeroes us into the part of the world that we want to be talking about.
Yes, the Balfour Declaration was a critical step within the progress of what we've been talking about. And it has to do with the curation and construction of things that help the system. So the Balfour Declaration was simply a declaration by the British government that they promise that they're going to establish a state for the Jews. And before the Balfour Declaration, like how come it happened? It didn't come from thin air. Before it, there was Chaim Herzl, who founded the Zionist organization at the end of the 19th century. And Chaim Herzl wanted, and the people around him, they wanted a state for the Jews because the Jews were suffering for ages. Really, the suffering of the Jews, when you describe it even before the Holocaust, from the time of the Crusades, the suffering is not... In Europe, it was great. Like the Crusades, as they moved towards the Middle East, they wiped out Jewish settlements in Europe. And the Jews wanted a state, and Chaim Herzl wanted it in Argentina.
Interesting.
And the Balfour Declaration happened at a time when Turkey, Ottoman Turkey, was called the sick man of the Middle East. Ottoman Turkey was collapsing. Someone has to replace Ottoman Turkey.
Another empire in decline.
Yeah. And who was the candidate to replace Ottoman Turkey? Who had their eyes? Other empires. They had their eyes on the Middle East, mainly Europe at the time, more than the United States of America, Europe at the time. And what they did is very, very intelligent, because, we cannot we cannot think that people don't work intelligently because the bank system has convinced us that when you use conspiracy theory, it means it's a lie, as if there are no conspiracies at all. They have, they curate vocabulary. So, so when you talk about lands that the British government had, or that the British government was pushed to go through their system, then you would see that it is in the interest of the West to start something called Arab nationalism. So when we talk about Arab nationalism, people who are educated about the politics of the Middle East, they think of the revolutions of someone like Nasser, or even someone like Saddam Hussein. People like that, they used to say, we are Arab nationalists. Where did this start? This started in the 19th century. Arab nationalism was extremely important for the West to recruit the Arabs against the Ottomans, and they managed to do it.
So was there ever an Arab nationalism before it was kind of invented? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but that was more than 1,000 years old when the caliphate of the Abbasids was in Baghdad. And that was actually Muslim rather than Arab nationalism. Right. But then what happened in that Muslim empire is that the Arabs were in control of it, and therefore the Arabic became the lingua franca. And that's why my Arabic, for example, because I come from Lebanon, is a modern Arabic that is highly influenced. Actually, it is one of the Arabics that's highly influenced by the local languages that my ancestors may have used to speak.
Yeah.
So yes, so the Arab nationalism rose through the help of, thank you very much, Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah. And eventually King Faisal, who came from Mecca, was promised that he will have a huge kingdom in the Middle East to replace the Ottomans. That was of the Hashemite family. Eventually, it was all divided, as you know. So, but anyway, the Jewish case, it is a case, and it was used in order to, it was much more useful to create a state in Palestine. So there was a motto that was a beautiful and very attractive motto that the British and the Zionists coined: a land with no people for a people with no land.
Oh, okay.
Now, a land with no people meant Palestine. But Palestine is too fertile to be left with no people. Had you been speaking about the desert of Saudi Arabia? Yeah, it makes sense. There are there are empty areas, like the empty quarter in Saudi Arabia. That's a land with no people. But then a land like Palestine, who's got rivers, who's got really a lot of springs, and is also on the east coast of the Mediterranean, always had a trade, and the trade was really flourishing. It had an excellent level of education. When Palestine collapsed, I was, after Palestine collapsed, a few years, I joined school. I was born in 1950. I joined school. My teachers from primary to secondary were all Palestine University graduates. Those are the people who taught me. And where did they live? They lived in camps, in slums, with very little services, infrastructure. So eventually, the creation of Israel is created as a spearhead. It is created to make sure that the Arabs, whose nationalism they sort of accepted, and it eventually grew, and many of the Christian Arab writers were extremely influential in calling people towards it. They were seen as dangerous, and of course, with a religion, they become even more dangerous. And so what happened is that, okay, let's find a spearhead which is different, and the Jewish case was redecorated. Actually, the promised land in the Bible is not a land for the Jews. The promised land is from God to Abraham. Abraham appeared before Jews hundreds or even more than 1,000 years, according to the Bible. So even if I quote the theology, the Old Testament, Abraham was promised the land between the two rivers, which are the Nile and the Euphrates. These two rivers, which are the two blue lines on the Israeli flag, because this is the only explanation of two blue lines there. But then, of course, the other explanation, which they come up with, is that this color is the color of a Jewish shawl. Yes, the Jewish.
So you're pretty sure that those two lines represent that river to the sea?
Yes,
concept.
Yes, because
no wonder they get so furious then about it ever being chanted against them, because that would make sense.
It's different. From river to sea is Palestine. From river to river is Greater Israel.
Okay, gotcha. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're upset about river to sea because they actually are being accused that they're going to wipe out other people who are living in Israel. Actually, who are they? We cannot say that they are the Jews. Israel does not represent all the Jewish sects. There are many Jewish sects which are against Israel. Some of them who you see in black, men and women, and covered like the Muslims, are for Palestine. They're against Israel.
Yeah, because it's very easy to assume from this far away that it's sort of like a homogenous bunch of people. And
it's dangerous for the Jews. You can see what is happening around the world. The attacks are targeted sometimes at Jews who have absolutely nothing to do with it and who may be against Israel. They're just attacked. A Jewish restaurant, a Jewish couple of people, a Jewish priest, they are attacked. Why? Because Israel has now, unfortunately, appeared to the world the way we now see it. The way the West now sees it is the way the Middle Easterners and my parents saw it then.
So the establishment of Israel was really, for the empires involved, just a move on a chessboard, really, was it?
Yes, it definitely was very convenient because it solved more than one problem. It solved a huge problem of the Jews in Europe who are European Jews. It solved a big problem, of course, for the empire because then you'd have a military base, a powerful military base, an educated military base that has a lot of technology and that gets a lot of funding.
It's still a military base, essentially, isn't it? I mean, if you're the US, it's a forward military base. It's like a land-based aircraft carrier or something.
It is a forward, extremely powerful, highly technological military base supported by excellent research in their universities, the research that goes all the way from the scientific research, hard sciences, to the social sciences areas. So yeah, it is. It's a very big, important base. However, if I may add something about Israel, Israel, like the social scientists in America, had to develop the understanding of democracy, especially to make people accommodate Israel, because they used to claim that Israel is the only democracy in the world.
We've heard that over and over. That was kind of been drummed into all of us over the years.
If you look at the actual Arab Jews, because there are people who are called Arab Jews who still live in Israel, some of them came from the Middle East, but some of them came from Iran, some from Morocco. Now, those are Jews of the Middle East and the Arab world. The Jews of the Middle East and the Arab world are called Mizrahi. The Jews of Europe are called Ashkenazi.
Yep.
If you read about the difference of the financial abilities and what is given by the government as programs for development of these communities, you will see that Mizrahis, for example, the southern suburb of Tel Aviv is almost a slum, and it is Mizrahi Jews, it's not Arabs. Now, so there is poverty. However, there is also lack of democracy. There's a special kind of democracy. Now, when you have representation which is not balanced, and the system itself doesn't allow it to be balanced, because if you're not a Jew, then you're not as represented as the Jews. You don't have the right. You don't have the right for certain positions, actually, without them even trying to name you. It's just the system, as we described. It doesn't work that way. Any person in the Israeli government who is for development of the Israeli system to become a Western-like democracy for everybody living inside it, like New Zealand here, they won't be able to stay there. The system rejects them because it's very dangerous for the system itself.
Not a true democracy as we would understand it.
No, it's not. It has democratic touches on it. It has a beautiful painting on it.
Yeah. All right. So then it was what, after 1917, another 30 years before the state was established as a state.
Yes.
How do we get from there to, well, first of all, there's the Holocaust.
Yes.
And that is obviously the establishment of the state happens after that.
Yes.
Interesting timing.
Very interesting timing. And the Holocaust created a lot, of course, of displaced people who were immigrants. They had to run away. And many Jews were saved by certain important people in Europe. One of them was Count Bernadotte. Count Bernadotte saved about 20,000 Jews. And he was one of the people who helped put many of these Jews on ships and send them to Palestine, where it is safe. And
that's kind of understandable. That's I mean,
Yes,
they needed safety. Okay, so
that's good.
we know that. Yeah.
That's good. And they were welcomed by the Palestinians because the Palestinians come from a collectivist culture, which now is painted by social sciences of the West as a backwards culture.
Well, that's interesting because that's the narrative that has just very recently with Iran has been I mean, we know that that Persian culture has been thousands of years
Yes,
and have forgotten what we're just finding out, let's say, over that long arc. But they're
yes,
being portrayed as kind of primitive in a way and sort of
yes,
locked in
exactly.
thousands of years ago in their thinking. But I mean, how can that be true?
Exactly, and unfortunately, collectivist cultures, many of their peoples have been wiped out as civilizations. As you know, what happened in Central America, they were not backward tribes. They were a civilization. If you look at the fineness of the buildings, how they
Yeah,
carved
the
the stone,
Aztecs and the
how they
Mayans, and I've seen them. Yeah,
this is amazing.
incredible. Yeah.
Now they don't exist anymore, like, or they become
Well,
very
akin to the pyramids in Egypt, actually. Many of
yes.
their structures,
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
level.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the collectivist culture in Palestine, which is formed of Christians and Muslims, many Christians. Now we see only Muslims in Palestine because the Christians found it easier to move to Lebanon and get the Lebanese ID card and passport. The Muslims were not. And that's another thing that happened. So they were welcomed. They came in. And of course, the way that things were constructed was for them to be in control of the country, eventually form a state of Israel, which was supported not just by the West, also by Stalin and the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union supported it, and what you can see are touches, very important touches. The kibbutz. A kibbutz in Israel it started as a commune. If one of the first prime ministers, or probably the first, was Golda Meir. She came from East Europe. Golda Meir, and I haven't checked that piece of information yet, so it needs to be checked. So as I mentioned it, I shouldn't claim it is 100% true, but I came across writings that say Golda Meir was a member of the Politburo of one of the communist parties in Eastern Europe. Now, they stood by it because the Soviet Union saw it as a freedom movement against the Ottoman Empire and against the British mandate, because the British were occupying Palestine at the time. And when the Irgun and the Haganah were doing their killings, they were also attacking the British, because the British were trying, to some extent, of course, if you're a British officer in Palestine at the time, you're not a part of the conspiracy. You're a part of the big wheel. You're a part of the big system, but you cannot see the big system. The example that I sometimes give, is that we understand the intricacies of the system not more than what we can understand beneath the skin of our palm. What's happening beneath the skin of my palm? Who of the people can really describe the details of what happens in there, the blood, the cells, the DNA, and so on? We don't know. And it's our palm. And it's the same in the system. You're a British officer in Palestine, Israel, and you're going to try to stop the Irgun from burning villages. You do that, and they fight against you. And then the communists see, oh, yeah, you're fighting against the British Empire. Good. We're going to support you.
So another chessboard move there again. Yeah. All right. I want to move to, because I'm very curious about how you've framed this. You talk about 1982 and the strategic engineering of 1982 leading up now to the current invasion of Lebanon. What happened in 82 and what do you mean by strategic engineering? I mean, I know what that means, but explain that, flesh that out a bit more if you don't mind.
Yes. Now, the strategic engineering has to do with what happened after the invasion in 1982. In 1982, the Israelis invaded all the way the south of Lebanon to the Beirut. They surrounded Beirut, and at the time there were Palestinian organizations armed Palestinian organizations in Lebanon. And these armed Palestinian organizations, although they were not doing what Hezbollah was doing, like bombing the north of Israel, they were seen as not friendly. We don't want them there. And so Israel wanted these armed people out. Before that, they had them out from Jordan because they were armed in Jordan as well. So they moved to Beirut and Lebanon. So in order to get rid of them, Israel invaded and they sent them out. But although they sent them out of Lebanon to Tunisia in the 80s without their arms, Israel stayed in Lebanon till the year 2002. So during that interval, something similar to what happened in the Netherlands and in France when they were occupied by the Nazis happened in Lebanon. The youth resistance, I had two professors at the American University of Beirut. One of them was Franz Bruin and the other one was Heineken. And they both came from the Netherlands. These two were very good friends, but one of them was a communist and the other one was a nationalist. And they both came from the Netherlands. Although they were friends, we could see that they supported different campaigns in the world. Yeah. However, they were resistance that worked together, nationalist and communist. And it is similar to the resistance that, like, to what happened in Spain when the fighting of the anarchists and the communists against Franco, or even, so this happens. So what happened in Lebanon is that the young men and women, they formed resistance groups. Now, some of these resistance groups are nationalist resistance groups, which are very difficult to discredit, which are very difficult to paint as evil, because what are you going to say? They are secular. They're not religious. They're not communists. They're just Lebanese who wanted the Israel out of their country. And they were called Jammul. Jammul stands for the National Front of the Liberation of Lebanon. Okay. Now, Jammul, of course, at that time was doing certain operations within Lebanon, military operations, causing, of course, death, which I'm totally against. I'm totally against wars altogether. But then there was another group that started, which is religious, which is Hezbollah. Now, when resistance starts naturally. Certain cultures, many cultures, they prefer to be wiped out and not ruled. That's the only thing that explains the wiping out of the Aborigines in Australia, the indigenous people in America. Why were they wiped out? They could have lived in peace. They don't want to. So this is what happens. So they become what they call themselves istishhadiyin, which are people who want to die in order to protect their country, like every other army person. Like if you're a member of the army, this is what you got to do. However,
well, that's what we celebrate Anzac Day for, people going off to foreign shores to fight for our freedom. You know? Yes,
and instead of mourning these young men, we only call them heroes. They are heroes, but at the same time, we should feel sad, not just proud.
So that flipping to having a group representing a religious point of view in the resistance, is that some kind of cue for Israel? Was that like kind of like a red rag to the bull?
Course, because it is in the interest. It's very difficult to paint them as a devil. More difficult than painting Jammul as a devil. You can't paint Jammul as a devil. You can paint Hezbollah as a devil. Hezbollah also got arms from Iran. Everybody knows. So it was better armed. Now the fighting that happened when Israel withdrew because it became too expensive for them. The Israelis were full of statements that make Hezbollah appear as almighty and make Nasrallah as the brilliant person who is their enemy, who they need to focus on. So the enemy, instead of remaining Lebanon and Jamul, became Hezbollah. So
Okay.
Hezbollah eventually, of course, was supported. And in one of my visits to Cairo, which is very, very far away from Lebanon, well, in our ways, in our part of the world, in Lebanon, I went to the villages because there were projects for schools that were happening there, and we were interested. And you could see the name of Nasrallah and Hezbollah in the villages of Egypt. And Egypt is Sunni, not Shia. They are enemies. The Sunnis and the Shias are more enemies than the Sunnis and the West. You could see the United Arab Emirates now has got the Abrahamic Accord with Israel, but they are against Iran. So what made these Sunnis in rural Egypt and most of the world see that Nasrallah is the savior? It is the way he was portrayed by the enemy. So this is what happens. And therefore, Nasrallah got stronger and stronger within Lebanon, not just with the Shia, but with many of the Christians and many of the Druze. So you curate your enemy. If you're intelligent, you do it. And it's not a conspiracy that we should think, again, I repeat myself, conspiracy theory, it's not right. No, this is what you got to do. If you're intelligent, you do it that way. If you're not intelligent, you don't do it that way.
Yeah, being intelligent doesn't mean that you're nice or that you're moral or anything like that.
Actually, when I do research and when I was preparing for this interview, I was warned by the AI, and the warning was: don't use emotional words or moral words. Because if you use words like unethical, if you use bad, if you use cruel, etc., you're not talking science. In order to talk science, you have to refrain from anything that has to do with that. Morality is calling people's emotions. What you need to do in interviews like that, we are advised, is you appeal to their logic. However, when talking about Israel, there is a lot of appealing to the emotions. A lot. The Holocaust is all about emotions.
Yeah, but there are moral principles that aren't necessarily emotional principles. They're just kind of foundation principles of humanity, aren't they? And
you are very right, because in fact, all of our civilization was built because we are able to cooperate with each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we are able to forgive each other, etc. So when we talk about civilization, we're talking about moral civilization. And the current way it is being seen is one of the destructive parts, because the system we spoke about at the beginning when we started talking is not a human system. It is a system. It controls it. The humans work within it. It doesn't understand morality. It doesn't understand being nice. Being nice by some of the big business people, I'm sure you know, is considered a weakness.
Yeah. Well, just watch The Sopranos.
Yes. Like Trump's brother, I think, committed suicide. And President Trump, with all due respect to the head of the free world, and I don't know whether we are still the free world here, I'm not being very objective, he really badmouthed his brother. He said weak. You could look it up.
Was he the one who, I think, had an alcohol problem? Is that who you're talking about?
He had problems, definitely. And probably he was weak. But your brother was weak and commits suicide, and you're so powerful, it's not nice to say.
I'm just thinking here, again, on what you're saying, I'm jumping to October 7th, 2023, okay? Because that seems to be, for even people here, some kind of line in the sand that helps people make a decision for themselves, you know, who's good and who's evil.
Yes.
Now, and there was a lot of material distributed following that attack, showing gruesome things, and it was shown widely on media.
Yes.
Many people have questioned what happened there and how it happened.
Yes.
Do you want us to speak to that? Because that's a
Yes.
significant
Yes, of
event
course.
on where we are now.
Definitely. There is a huge question mark on how did it happen? How come it happened? Like, if you live in South Lebanon, you know that if a bird crosses the border from South Lebanon into the north of Israel, there are machines that detect it. These days, you have the power really to detect a lot. So it is impossible for a big number of terrorists.
Paragliders that go 30 miles an hour, just saying.
Yes, it is impossible that they are not detected, because the detection doesn't only detect metals, it also detects anything, because you have a lot of detection, you have a lot of light detectors, and they can be detected. But if we go a little bit back in the history of Hamas, what made Hamas? What made Hezbollah made Hamas? What about the tunnels of Hamas? Some tunnels that were under that were discovered under a hospital were dug by Israel. Israel says they dug them. They needed them as for storage, they say. But then, yeah, the Hamas started using them. Now, when this happened and the attack happened on October 7th, definitely, of course, horrible things do happen in wars. And it's very easy for the West to say they are collaterals and mistakes, like the 3 attacks that happened on the Iranian school in South Iran that killed, or that what happened to the boy Durra, who was hiding in a corner under his father and who was being shot, and the father was begging IDF to stop shooting because he has child. He was killed with his child. Or what happened to Hind Rajab. So there are many atrocities, like the atrocities that were committed on the 7th of October are bad. We need to condemn them. But are they a part of the long history or aren't they? Why did Hamas win against PLO? And what happened? Why did Israel withdraw and give the power to Hamas? Because Israel was in Palestine, in Gaza when Hamas was voted. Israel was in Gaza when Hamas was voted, and then they withdrew and they gave the power to Hamas. Is Israel that stupid? Impossible.
Yeah, I can't see. No.
It's impossible. They're brilliant. And I'm not talking about the Jews. Israel does not represent the Jews. Israel is not really a democracy for the Mizrahi Jews. They don't represent them. The Mizrahi Jews, if you watch programs like Fawda, which means chaos, which was produced in Israel by Israelis, that Fawda shows you how the Mizrahi Jews feel towards how Israel treats them, although they are armed in order to kill terrorists in the Arab areas.
I've seen footage of out of Lebanon. You don't see footage out of Israel, by the way, after Iranian attacks. There doesn't seem to be any of that.
That's right.
And obviously seen footage of Gaza, and it looks, it's like a Second World War bombed out sort of German city kind of thing, even worse than that. So Israel are taking advantage of the opportunity right now. What is the opportunity? I suppose painting Iran as an evil adversary gives an opportunity to Israel to carry out the dirty work, let's say, but without the scrutiny or the judgment of the world against them. They've portrayed or framed these people as unsophisticated, sort of tribal-like enemies. That stuck, which is like an open checkbook to go in and do anything you want, and that's happening now, right, in Lebanon.
Yes.
Is that, have I characterized it in a way that makes sense?
It's exactly the way it is happening. There are, of course, a number of factors and a number of lines, and it's like sometimes we're accused of oversimplifying when we try to explain and make people understand the way you have just done. It is a bit complex. So what is happening is also the erasure of the towns, and the erasure of the towns. You would see that there are many areas that have been erased, and schools, hospitals stopped operating.
And the tactic of blowing up entire villages is so there's nowhere to live, and then displacing the people is kind of just.
Yeah, displacing them for good.
Yeah, and
This is how the Palestinians moved into Lebanon and Syria and Jordan. So now we have about 1 million displaced people in Lebanon who went north to our areas, to our villages. I come originally from a village in the mountains. Our village was full of people who came from the south. Now, these people who came from the south, some of them are young men. And the young men who came from the south are bound to have been spoken to by Hezbollah, and some of them may have been recruited by Hezbollah. Having been recruited by Hezbollah, if they run away and they come to hide because they realize they cannot fight anymore, Israel has got, as you know, the power to find out exactly where they are. And they did bomb one whole building in my village, very far away from the south, called Badaran, and they killed 2 of our people who had nothing to do with South Lebanon or Hezbollah. Families living there, no warning. They tell us a lot that we warn people before we bomb. They do, but they don't always do it. And so this is happening, and everybody's paying the price. So yes, what is happening is a number of lines. One line is displace these people, try to get rid of them. Is it possible to move the Shia to Iraq? Now we have people in Lebanon speaking like that. We can only live if the Shia leave us and go to Iraq or Iran. There are people who are doing that. And mind you, the American ambassador to Lebanon, who is originally a Lebanese, was only 2 days ago saying, if you're a Lebanese and you don't like what is happening now, and you don't like the talks that we are organizing between Lebanon and Israel, you can leave. Leave Lebanon. Lebanon, go live in another place. An American ambassador is telling Lebanese people, if you don't like it, leave it. Very arrogant. So, yeah.
So you just referred to something just before, were they talks or diplomatic consultations? How can anyone believe any of that is credible if you judge it by the record? You can't believe any credibility in any of utterances, statements, policy positions.
For many years, Paul, we have been convinced, and I was one of them, that when we use the term propaganda, it means Nazi, it means communist, it means totalitarian, it may mean China, but it doesn't mean us. It doesn't mean our system. Actually, when we start to believe things like that, it is propaganda. It is another side of propaganda. So we were taught. This is how we were brought up. This is how I was taught by an Irish missionary school and then an American university. So you would expect me to find it very difficult to believe the other narrative.
Well, if you're claiming that you've got peace talks going on, and then you look at the record, and you look at what happened around the attack on Iran, where they were in the middle of peace talks when it happened, how can you assign any credibility to any of this rhetoric? It has to be propaganda, right?
When you talk about peace talks, you need to talk about peace talks similar to peace talks between Iran and America, like 2 countries that are fighting against each other. But talking about peace talks between Lebanon and Israel, Lebanon, not Hezbollah, because the peace talks are Lebanon and Israel, actually means nothing. Why? Lebanon hasn't got any collateral. Lebanon hasn't got anything to offer to these peace talks as a government. Nothing whatsoever. They can't even guarantee that Hezbollah stops acting. They cannot guarantee anything. Our army is less armed than a normal police in a decent country. And our army has got American military personnel in our Ministry of Defense in a place called Yarzi. And we are not allowed, Lebanon is not allowed to get arms except from the West. Otherwise, it is getting it from the terrorists. And the West doesn't want to arm the Lebanese army to defend Lebanon. The West wants to arm the Lebanese army in order to fight against Hezbollah, which means literally a civil war, which of course we can't afford. Therefore,
and you've been there before too, so
yeah,
that would be history repeating itself. I'm thinking of our government and how it's responded. I've had a few conversations with the Foreign Minister, Winston Peters. I remember talking with him a few years ago about Ukraine. He said that was an illegal invasion, so therefore, we support Ukraine. Recently with Iran, it's clearly an illegal attack. He was a little more equivocal on that, I suppose, because, we're getting into definitions that can push people into having to make solid or present solid positions. So what do you say to New Zealanders and the New Zealand government regarding their position on what we're talking about?
It's extremely important to protect New Zealand and serve New Zealand's interests. So let's think about what New Zealand interests are.
Yeah.
What are New Zealand's interests? To send our young people to take part the way they did in Afghanistan, or not to send them like we did in Iraq?
Well, I've got a daughter in the Navy. I don't want her going anywhere near this.
Yeah. So we didn't send soldiers to Iraq. We didn't participate in the Iraqi war. What was the result? The result was when I go into an Arab country and I use my British passport and my wife, who is a Kiwi, comes with me to the airport, I have to, as a British, to stand in a line with many other people waiting for a visa. She walks through immediately because she's a New Zealander.
Okay.
Because New Zealand took a stance which is easy to take. I just don't want to send my young men and women to wars like that. Now, the other thing that New Zealand did, which is extremely good, and it is in history, is the brokerage of peace in Papua New Guinea. In Papua New Guinea, while we were unaligned, Australia was helping the government in order to quell a revolution of separatists. Now, what did New Zealand do? The war took 10 years. New Zealand brokered an agreement and invited the parties into Wellington, and eventually now there is peace over there. They managed. New Zealand has got this power of credibility. It is in our interest not to lose credibility. Saying that, we cannot, of course, get out of the structure that may damage us a lot. The banking system has control on a lot of our collaterals, a lot. So we have to be extremely careful. We cannot say, okay, we're going to side by Iran. This is wrong. Or by China. This is also wrong. What we need to do is to serve the New Zealand the interest. The New Zealand interest is for the government to learn from the past and learn about how much they won. They don't have to say Israel is committing a massacre. Okay, I may say it as a New Zealand citizen, but I don't want my government to go that far. It may hurt us a lot. But anyway, the government will fall. If they say it, I think the government will fall. Some way in the system, somehow they won't be able to make it into the next elections.
Right.
So I would say that the very important thing to do is to be aware of these things, that we can be brokers, we can stand as much as possible on the side, and we can strengthen our relationships with other people. Why not? We don't want to be their military allies at all. We don't want to support the war against America, let's say, in the Pacific. This is not in our interest, but it is in our interest to have good deals with China and not try to punish countries that are being punished by the West. Who are we to punish? We cannot. We don't have the power, neither the military nor the financial power. We're a small country. So the government has to have that awareness that the New Zealand citizen needs that and that we are highly respected. Now I have a New Zealand passport when I travel even to America. I'm proud of the British passport, but when I travel to America or anywhere, even to Europe, I use my New Zealand passport. It's thanks to the previous government.
So is this what we call soft power, using soft power?
This is soft power and this is intelligence. And any extremism eventually becomes destructive, although it may win in the meantime and show you as strong as powerful.
Okay, speaking to folk here who say, why aren't we protesting harder? Why aren't we calling genocide, all of that? What you're saying is, hey, careful. Yes. Careful of the words you use.
Yes.
Think about everything. There's a strategy to getting somewhere in this, and you could flame it out by just loose talk. And
exactly. Like the banking syndicate, the American camp and the Western European camp is very selective when it comes to dictators, as you know. Like there are dictators who were very cruel in history. The journalist Khashoggi, who comes from one of the Middle Eastern countries.
We know what happened to him.
Yeah, that I don't want to name that ruling family. That journalist was chopped into pieces inside an embassy, and our government said nothing, and they continued the trade and so on. Now, it is okay to continue the trade and to keep the diplomatic relationship. What is not okay is to accuse other dictators of being bad. Now that attack to the other side is wrong and is not in our interest.
But if you were sure of what happened, Saad, if you were sure of it, the back channels behind the scenes, I mean, I have no experience in this, but, you know, I'd be tempted to say, okay, well, we won't say too much about that, but we know what you did.
The banking system, it cannot be except after this. If you think about the banking system and the logic of how systems work in societies, this is the only thing that they can do. They can't. They need collateral. How can they lend money to corporations if corporations do not have something
Well, they can't even create the money because the money is created on the back of the collateral. It didn't exist before the collateral existed. So
even if they print money, because America does print money that is backed up by nothing, that money will not have value except if they have collateral, and they can only have collateral if they have collateral. They have to put their hands on it. So one of the things is, if I don't put my hand on your gold, I will definitely put my hand on the way you move that gold. So now when you look at what happened in the Caribbean, the Venezuelan president, now, he was sent a group of young men who are armed, who kidnapped him and took him to the... Now, this has become an extreme. Now, if you think, who would do that? Why would they do that? It's not a conspiracy. It's intelligence. It's intelligence. The power of the intelligence of the Mossad and the CIA and MI6 is huge. What they underestimated, unfortunately, is the power of the Savak, which are the Persians. The Persians, historically, from the time of the Shah of Iran, who America dumped when they recognized the Khomeini government, when the Islamic Revolution started. Khomeini, by the way, came to Iran after living many years in France. He was protected by the West.
So Iran today, Venezuela as well, oil, gas, fertilizer, helium. I mean, it's all there. It's all about the collateral, is it?
That's the only explanation. Otherwise, of course, what we are doing when we say we want to free people, how much did we free the people of Afghanistan, and what happened? We tried to free them from the communists, and now they are under the Taliban, who are terrorists. And we left our allies who helped us in Afghanistan, who helped my friends who I did training to in the army in Wellington. These people helped them. We had to leave them begging to come on the planes with us. What has Taliban done to them and their families? God knows. We did the same in Vietnam.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, we simply had a deal with Ho Chi Minh and gave up Saigon to them, and we didn't care about the people who were in the army. We did care about the people who have a lot of money. Those people can come to us.
Yeah. Who's homeless on the streets? It's veterans.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
We
so
did the same in
just
Iraq.
disposable, right? Just disposable.
It is. We did the same in Iraq. We did the same in Libya. We like in many countries, when we say we're saving people from dictators, we want the freedom. It's a free world. We put pressures on the people to change the regimes. We are leaving all of these countries in shambles. Now we're saving Lebanon from Hezbollah.
All right, gosh, Saad, we've been chatting for over an hour. That time has gone so quick. Almost feel like we probably need another hour. In summary, how do you, I mean, is this just going to be a repetition of the same thing over and over again as far as we can see? Or does something, can you see anything happening or anything, a circuit breaker to this pattern which has been going on for so long?
Yes, yes. I cannot see a time frame,
Right.
but I can see a direction. The time frame is not clear to me. I don't know how long it will last, but the direction, which we can do absolutely nothing about, is similar to the direction of the Byzantine Empire. Collapse. This system cannot remain. Whether we can, in the West, replace it by something else, which is extremely difficult, or not, I'm not sure, but this system is going to collapse. Is it going to take down with it the whole economic system at the moment? This is going to cause big problems, and this will cause poverty. This will cause hunger. That will cause big problems. So I hope it doesn't happen this way. But this is towards collapse. It's not going to continue. This can't continue. In what time frame? I don't know. Who's replacing it? I think the collectivist cultural approach will, because we have collectivists in the West. We have many.
Wow. Yeah. So interesting. Saad Abou Chakra, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. I think we've learned a bit, and we can see how that arc of history has played out now to this moment in time. So it's fascinating.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Have a good day.